Hi, and we welcome again with one of my Snappy Chats. Now, we're doing it on Tuesdays today because I wanted to make sure I got to speak to the beautiful Nicole, who I'll introduce shortly. And unfortunately, she wasn't available on Wednesdays, but we'll be back to Wednesdays next week at 10 a.m. But I want to introduce my amazing friend, Nicole. She is a specialist in optimizing your brain. She's going to tell us a lot more about this just now. And I just wanted to share these Snappy Chat. It's really about learning and growing together in business, because I found personally, being in my business on my own for 9 years, that it can get a little bit lonely. But the truth is, we all go through the same experiences, challenges in many ways, and we can all learn and grow together. And sometimes when we're feeling a little bit down in a business, there's nothing better than actually having other people around you who knows this journey, who are on the same journey, who understands that this is a long game and there's going to be peak and troughs, and it's all around resilience and building that resilience, which you're fantastic at in terms of what you do as well, Nicole. So share a little bit. Hello, Nicole, by the way. Great to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure.
Yeah, share a little bit about yourself, please, because I'm really excited to have you here.
Yeah, well, I'm Nicole from Get Brain Fit, and that's what I help people do. I help people improve their memory, mood, focus, grit through really getting brain fit. It's a focus on brain health. And, my own experience with overcoming brain challenges, I walk the walk and talk the talk, coming from a prognosis of expect death or life in a vegetative state after a severe traumatic brain injury at 16. I really did have to change my brain. It had to do a complete reset. And so I love helping people change their brain now to reach their true potential.
That's such a massive story you have to tell, and you're obviously not going to go into the details of it all today. But this whole idea of having to literally, hello, Royce, thank you for being here. This whole idea of having to literally start over in terms of your brain. And I don't even know if you remember any of the first thoughts that you had, or even if you had thoughts, but the power of the brain and the fact that we can change it is what you obviously learned, and you're teaching others now. So I don't know, how does that come about in terms of when you are literally at that, what happens inside the brain when you are going through that, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit in terms of going, what the heck,
Yeah, look, I have a bit of amnesia from before and after the accident, and obviously I was in a coma for 3 weeks, so I slept through a lot of it. But there were clues that I did hear even when I was in a coma, because my dear mother, my late mother, she tried everything to wake me up from that coma, and even bribery. So she promised me a puppy. If I woke up from the coma, she'd buy me a puppy. Okay.
And did you somehow pick that up whilst you were in a coma? That there was a puppy coming?
One of my very first communications, I couldn't talk when I came out of the coma, and I was paralyzed from the neck down, but I had some partial movement in one arm, and one of my first communications was writing down, "Where is my puppy?"
Isn't that, wow, yeah, because, there was something, obviously you were picking up signals, even though you're obviously in a coma, which is the way to rest and heal, isn't it, for the brain? Sometimes it needs that time to just rest and heal.
Yeah. So so I did get little clues that the brain was switched on, even though the doctors, they were doing what they call the doll's eye test a few times because they thought I was brain dead.
Yeah.
And but the cogs were still turning in there.
Wow, and I love that. And your mum must have been like, "I'll get you the puppy now."
I did get the puppy. I did.
Oh, that's amazing. So obviously, you come back from pretty much, the doctors had pretty much given up on you. And hello, Matthew, thank you for being here. The puppies, not the puppies, the doctors had given up on you to some extent.
Yeah.
And so when you woke up and you're like, holy moly, this is big. And I imagine, I don't know, do we go into, I guess, some level of depression at this point, like realizing the amount of challenges in front of us?
Look, I think in that hospital stage, it was really about survival. And even like they kept me on oxygen until the day I walked out of the hospital. And it was really in that survival state. So I was determined to walk and, do everything that I needed to do to get out of hospital. That was the focus, to get out of hospital. I wanted to go home. I didn't remember the town I grew up in. I didn't remember the clothes in my wardrobe when I got home.
But you wanted to go home. You knew that you wanted to get out of there. Yeah, there was some drive in you.
That's it. It wasn't until I got home, and I guess, like with so many people who have injuries, it's not till you get home to the reality of the disabilities that you have. And friends, I mean, I was only 16, I was a cool teenager, and I went from a cool teenager to a teenager with significant disabilities, and my friends no longer knew how to relate to me. My personality
that's hard.
My personality had gone from a shy sort of teenager to this teenager with no frontal lobe function who said anything that came to her head and could be offensive and embarrassing, or both. I had to learn social cues again. Everything was learnt from scratch again. Wow. So that's when the depression set in, when my friends kind of deserted me, and I had these disabilities. I had, all these barriers. I couldn't balance in the dark. I had to have a little bell next to my bed so that when I needed to go to the toilet at night, Mum would come and get me and take me to the toilet.
So this is when the reality sets in of what's happening, but there was still a drive or motivation in you somewhere the whole way through that you're going to get through this, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my primary motivation, Christine, was I wanted to prove those damn doctors wrong. They put me on a
good motivation.
They expected me to be on a disability pension for life. I've actually got a report from a neuropsychologist that says that if Nicole returns to any form of employment, it won't be meaningful and would need to be highly supervised. Yeah.
Haven't you proved them wrong?
Well, that's not the life I wanted.
I know, but that inner strength of the human being, in terms of, I guess that's part of it, perhaps what you also help your clients with in terms of finding that inner strength when you go, I can't do this.
Yep, absolutely. And, when you're working with the brain, I mean, how many people do you know, for example, that have gone to a psychologist or a counsellor for many years, and they've kind of reached a plateau? It might have helped, with coping mechanisms and things like that at the beginning, but, after years, they're not really learning anything new, and it's become more of a habit than maybe a helpful strategy. And, I've worked with a lot of those people, and it's the brain balance that needs to be reinstated to enable that next level of progress. It's
so this is where your teaching actually comes in, and they are not just for people with injury, it's all of us, because we can all get stale. I think what you're saying is a bit of stalemate in the brain unless we keep growing, keep learning, keep expanding.
And if you've got a client, I mean, that person who says, we've all met them, they say no to everything. No, that won't work. No, I couldn't do that. No.
This is how it is. End of story. Can't do it.
Yep. Can't change. That can be an issue in the cingulate gyrus of the brain, which sits just behind the frontal lobe, and it's typically caused by low serotonin. So if we're trying to introduce new things, if we're trying to get people to make changes for their betterment, but they're fighting this area of their brain which is keeping them stuck, then they're going to be like a mouse on a wheel. You've got to balance the brain first.
And this is so interesting. I want to talk more about that. Roy says, amazing determination. April is here saying, great conversation, Nicole. Now, this is really interesting because it's not just a mindset. It's also actually quite physically, there's something in the brain missing that actually needs to be balanced. So we can add things to our, I guess, is it through diet or how?
Yeah, you can do it through diet, through exercise, through sunshine, through meditation. There are lots of ways to naturally stimulate serotonin in the brain. Same with dopamine, it's
and that's for everyone. Everyone can benefit from this, especially if you're in business on your own, or you're in business anyway and you're building a business. You got to always be coming up with something new. You can't just be a stalemate. You won't last. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I work with a lot of corporate entrepreneurs, business owners that with ADHD, and they're struggling with procrastination and distraction and things like that. And they get it through my brain change program. They're helping to balance their brain and get strategies in place, which actually help them move the momentum.
Oh, wow. And I guess with this, like we're always saying business, you got to have determination. We all see it on LinkedIn, all these resilience posts, all this determination. But this is next level in terms of going, you know what, if you can come back from anything, and if you can come back from what you've been through in your, injury where they told you that you're never going to, wake up or be in a vegetable state. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you can do anything in life. Yeah.
It's it that, this brain balance is so critical. And how would you know unless you look? And that's what my assessments do, basically. I look at people's brains through questionnaires to determine which areas of their brain are struggling. And then I design a customized brain optimization program to balance those areas of weakness in the brain. And
Oh, I'm interested in this now too, because I think we can all use that, because I can find, there are areas where I'm like, why do I keep doing the same thing? Why am I not moving forward here? Why do I keep falling back on this? And it takes a while to even notice that. Most of us don't even are conscious of that. I'm becoming conscious of these, but there's still a hesitation, let's use an example, chocolate. Yeah. Love to eat chocolate every day. And part of it is just joy, but there's also just a behavioral thing that's going on in terms of repeat habit.
Yeah, absolutely. And those habits are much easier to change when our brains are in sync.
Yeah, I love this. So obviously you have built a business. Where did that come from? How did you get to, okay, I've survived this, I've come good, and I guess it took, I'm assuming, some few years to get back to full functioning and movement and everything. At which point did you go, oh, let me start a business? And why?
Oh, look, I've for a long time, I've had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, and I've often had part-time sort of businesses on top of, the full-time job thing.
Yeah.
And so I was in the occupational rehabilitation industry, working with people with injuries to help them to return to work. For 19 years, I've been a rehabilitation counsellor. And it was actually when my mother was diagnosed with a terminal cancer that I decided to write my book, Holding On to Hope.
Yeah, we can't quite see. Yeah, you got, okay, Holding On to Hope. Bring it closer, because you got the background. That's
right. Okay.
Yeah, all right. Holding On to Hope. You can maybe put the link in afterwards in the comments, if you don't mind.
Sure. So Holding On to Hope, finding the new you after a traumatic brain injury. And, if I had $1 for every time someone said to me, Nicole, you should write a book, I would have paid off my house sooner. But
Fair enough.
It was that kind of like mum's diagnosis that made me go, I need to do this, because, I slept for 3 weeks while I was in a coma. I've got amnesia around the before and after. So I needed her to write the story. And while I was writing the book, I really came across some gaps in the brain injury space, and that made me go, well, I can help there. So I decided to start Get Brain Fit, the business to help people with brain injury. But I was just focused on brain injury at that point. That was my sole focus.
Yeah.
And that created my first challenge in business.
Yes, because we were talking about this beforehand. When we start a business, and this is just from my experience as well, and what I've seen working with clients, is everyone is going niche, 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 niche. Just find your niche down. And it's like, actually, if you niche too far down, you're going to be looking for a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
And it may not actually even be your best clients. You might think those are your best clients, but they may not be. There might be others out there. So I always say, let's start at, don't go, can't be, there's too wide and too narrow. There's a balance somewhere in the middle, just like the brain. There's balance, yeah, and you got to find it. So tell me more.
Yeah, so I was focused just on people with brain injury, but I found, as you just said, the niche was too small, and I wasn't, I wasn't kind of building. My business wasn't building to the extent where that I could sustain myself on that business alone. So it got me to thinking, well, and then you've got the other end of the spectrum. Everyone's got a brain, but you don't want to cast the net too wide. So then I really decided to sort of focus more on neurodiversity and brain injury. So, any issues with the brain, whether it be depression, anxiety, brain injury, ADHD, all those things that can go wrong with the brain, can get the brain out of balance on one hand. And I've streamed it into two sections. So I'm a registered NDIS provider. So I work with NDIS participants, but I also work
which is a government program in Australia. I'm just putting it out. We've got some Americans on here.
A disability insurance scheme. And also with entrepreneurs and teams to help them be more focused and productive through a balanced brain.
So it works for everyone. I imagine it works for addictions too, potentially.
Yeah, potentially. I haven't actually worked in that space with people with addictions apart from smoking, because I also am a master hypnotherapist. So I've helped people quit smoking with that. But that's again. So I've got two streams, the NDIS and private paying clients.
Perfect. And it's so interesting because whilst it could seem like very different situations that they're going through, what you do is actually relevant to all of them.
Absolutely. And when you look at another example of, how brain balance can really impact, I was working with someone with ADHD who had also been diagnosed with depression, and they were on an SSRI medication, which can slow some areas of the brain, including the prefrontal cortex, the boss of the brain. So with people with ADHD, typically their frontal lobe is struggling anyway. So they they struggle with impulse control, decision making, planning, focus, all of those things. The SSRI was making it worse, but no one had looked at this guy's brain. So he had been on this medication for years, like a mouse on a wheel. And, so basically the medication was changed based on my findings, and wow.
You got the doctors to listen, because usually the doctor would go, well, you're not a doctor, so don't listen to her.
Yeah, no, they did. And basically, that made all the difference. But how would you know unless you look at the brain?
You won't know. So how do you look at the brain?
So I've got questionnaires that I do. So if I can do those whether you're in America or in Australia. Basically, I send a link and you answer the questionnaires. That helps me determine which areas of the brain are struggling. Depending on what comes out of that, I may give you another questionnaire, but it just depends. If you're in Brisbane, I also do a euphoria assessment, which is like a portable EEG to look at your brain waves, to get a baseline foundational measure of your brain waves and your information processing speed. And that forms the foundation, so we can go back to and see how you are actually, how your brain is actually improving throughout the program. And so it involves brain.
So what do you actually do? Like, sorry, I'm so interested in this. So what actually happens once you got the questionnaire, you get an idea where the brain can be optimized. What then is it? Exercises? Is it drugs, or changing drugs, or what?
Look, depending on, because there's 16 different brain types, 7 different types of ADHD, multiple types of anxiety and depression. I identify all of that, and that builds into the clues of what the brain needs to get optimized and balanced. So that can involve changes in diet. It can involve physical exercise. It can brain training exercises. It can be different sorts of meditation. It can be hypnotherapy. It can be oxygen therapy. It can be
really customized, hey?
Absolutely. Totally customized to your unique brain.
Wow, I love it so much. And with you obviously working with yourself and coming through what you've been through in terms of your accident and coming to the other side and fully functioning again, what's the key things that you learned about yourself in terms of how we operate and how you optimize yourself?
Well, look, Christine, going back, like my accident was 36 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was back in the time where they really did still think that the brain was fixed, like the concrete under our feet. And once you reached adulthood, that was it. Okay, no more brain change. Now we know, thanks to neuroplasticity neuroplasticity was a concept about 100 years ago, but actually being used in treatment is relatively recent. And now we know the brain can change at any age, depending on the inputs we give it. So I guess I was very fortunate to have a psychologist at the time because I was very depressed. I was suicidal. He was way ahead of his time back then, and he actually did meditation with me to help me heal my brain. So I used to visualize my brain as a bunch of spaghetti or worms or whatever was the flavor of the day and heal it in my mind.
Wow.
And that was, that's just one thing I did. But,
meditation is more powerful than you give it credit often, yeah?
Well, and that's the thing. People going to go meditation. I haven't got time to do that. But actually, under brain scanning technology, we know it only takes 4 minutes of meditation to start to change the brain.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And how does this help us in business? Because it does.
Oh, for sure. Look, you need to give your brain a map to follow. If you don't, brain's 80% visual. So if you're not giving your brain a map to follow, a picture of what you want.
Picture what you want.
You can frame that as goals. You can frame that in a visualization. You can frame that
the visual board. Yeah.
But if you don't give your brain a picture of what you want, it's like saying, well, I'm going to go sailing around the world, but I'm not going to take a compass.
Okay. Can I share about myself? So my picture is the picture, my dream, which is something I've had since I was a child and is coming back strong now. As much as I love business, I really want to have an animal sanctuary.
Oh, wow.
That's what I really want. At the end of the day, if I had to walk away from this earth, I'd like to go, this is what I've done. It doesn't have to be big, but it has to be something that I don't have to worry about getting money in for, which is why the business should ideally sustain it. But I can't help but often when I go off in meditation or whatever, I like visualize exactly where it is in Maui. I want to live in Maui.
Yeah.
In Hawaii. I visualize the land. I visualize the house. I visualize the stables for the horses because I also want to look after horses. And I visualize the 15 dogs and stuff. Is that the right thing, or am I just dreaming at this point?
No. I mean, that's a great start, but it becomes more powerful when it's backed up with inspired action. And that is where the planning comes in. And that's where, like, drilling down into your key motivation for that. So, finding your why around that gives you that intrinsic motivation to take the next step. And it's those inspired actions that make it happen.
So we start with the pictures, and the pictures help the brain. But then, of course, we have to back it up to make the shift. Oh, does the shift already happen in the brain, regardless of whether we take action or not?
Oh, no, you've got to take action. There's no, you can't just, visualize
sit and dream away.
Sit on your butt. No. No, there has to be inspired action. But that inspired action, once you actually know your intrinsic why, and, you're backed up with an inspired action plan, plus the visualization, wow, things will
That's
happen.
when things start happening, and that's what you've done in your own business, yes?
Yes, absolutely. And I still meditate most mornings and visualize my goals. I want the oceanfront apartment. Thank you very much.
And with your ideal customers, when you realized you were niching too specifically, it was too niche down, did you actually visualize that as well in terms of, okay, who else can I help? Did you use those exercises as well for that?
Not so much with that. I mean, it was still visual because it was actually through the process of developing my website. And a wonderful lady called Holly Alloway helped me with my website. And through that process of really digging deep into my customer base, who I wanted to help, and created, I suppose, that visual representation of my niche. And that was amazing. That was an amazing process to go through to really clarify
Yeah,
exactly.
because when I work with people as well, and also in this, not website, but in working around understanding the ideal customers, for me, it's really around as soon as you can start actually visualizing who they are and we put a name to them, I make them put names to them saying, okay, here we found out what their motivations are, their pain points. Now give me some names of people you met, people that you believe in that. And suddenly when they start putting names to it, then suddenly it becomes a lot easier to recognize, because people have different motivations in all categories. So we need to understand that too. But to the point where once we put names to it, what I found is we can actually go to a networking event or anywhere, and we can much quicker going, I think you fit into that box, somewhat a box, because you use boxes in marketing to some extent. You fit in there, or you fit in there, or you fit in there. And it's always coming from the fact that they already can put a name to it, someone they met, and now suddenly it becomes a lot more tangible for them.
That's it. And sometimes, you've got to walk through doors, even if they're not the doors that you were expecting would open for you. Like I'm a part of the BX networking group, the regional leader for Redcliffe. And I've gone around other BX groups doing some presentations to their groups. And what I found was when I actually went away from, I suppose, my comfort zone, which is the disability sector, and started speaking more to goals and all that intrinsic goal planning and things like that. The business networking groups were like, oh, yeah, I'm interested in that, and I want to know how my brain can work better. And those doors started to open, and that was a bit of a surprise to me initially. And
sometimes we just got to put ourselves out there, and think they might not be interested, but suddenly they go, oh, that is of interest, and now we're learning from that. So it's market research, when we do presentations sometimes.
That's it. When you're doing something that's not getting you the results you want, change it.
Figure out something else, give it a little bit of time to learn what's not working and why, and then figure out how to change it. Because sometimes we also just need to give some things time. Some people in business are too quick to shuffle around, but never stick with something for a little while and growing or evolving that, because we kind of have to evolve it. Once we learn where there's a potential go, or no, if it's a no, go, walk away. But if it's a potential, start doing more research and figuring out what the way, and how do you, like with you people said to you, oh yeah, they're like, oh, that's of interest to me. Then you can dig deeper into that and go, okay, why is that of interest to you? And how does that work with what you're doing and how you can help them?
That's right. So now I've got, because of that sort of experience, my business has developed into two areas, like I've got a brain optimization assessment for the NDIS space, and I've got a peak performance brain audit for my business customers. So
I love that. And different names too, that appeals to different people, different motivations. I love that. We're going to finish up now, but April is saying here, she loves that you can actually see what part of the brain needs support. Quantum physics, where your attention goes, energy flows. Absolutely. She loves what I just said, part of it in terms of developing her own Bali retreat, which is coming up. If you want to go to Bali with April White, and also focus on the feeling and the why keeps the energy going. Isn't that true?
Oh, absolutely. The energy and the why. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're going to finish up. So I could talk to you forever, Nicole. You know that, because it's so interesting what you do. But we'll finish up now, because no one listens for much more than 30 minutes. I have learned that. That's a good time to keep in if you entertain. Now, where can people find you? Anything you got coming up, or anything you can share, whether it's free or paid, that you want to share? And you can put it in the comments as well, but please share with us now.
Yeah, so I'm just putting my my website up there, and I don't know if this will work.
Did you put it in the private chat, I think, accidentally? Let me just
yeah, maybe
go into the to the comments.
Oh, okay. All right, here we go. I'll copy and paste. Here we go. That one. So I'll put my book link in the chat there. That's I don't know, it's not letting me.
Is it not letting you do it? Otherwise, we'll do it afterwards. I'll see if I can do it now.
That's okay.
I'll do that. Getbrainfit.com.au. You keep talking.
Yep. My website, www.getbrainfit.com.au. And I've also got an Optimize Your Brain for Peak Performance guide if you want to get a copy of that. you can go onto my LinkedIn page. There's a link there for that. And if you have any questions, nicole@getbrainfit.com.au.
I'm just putting in yes. Get in touch with Nicole, because you will not. This is so interesting and it's so relevant to all of us. Doesn't matter whether you had a specific injury or not. We can all learn to optimize our brain. And guess what? I always think, you know what? The worst thing that could happen is not being able to, for me personally, like if my brain stopped working, what kind of life will I have?
Well, like this is it. And we need to start looking after our brains now, because like even Alzheimer's disease, that helps, good brain health helps prevent Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease takes years, sometimes decades, from when it actually starts deteriorating your brain to when the issues of memory become obvious. I mean, decades. So that's a long time to change the train, to reverse those symptoms.
Yeah.
And
What are the key signs? Because sometimes I think, am I just too busy? Am I actually starting to forget things?
yeah, well, if you start to lose things more often, you're losing your keys or your sunglasses, things like that, they could be little signs that you're either doing too much or your brain is starting to struggle. Our brains actually shrink naturally by an average of 5% a decade after the age of 40.
Wow. All right.
Okay. And the biggest sign of Alzheimer's disease is brain shrinkage. So we need to be working to maintain a healthy brain. So that's drinking more water, reducing your sugar intake, because sugar shrinks the brain, getting more exercise. They're just a few key things that we can all do every single day.
Sugar addiction is there, right there.
Okay, that's your number one.
That's my number one. Thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for coming on. I enjoyed this. Royce is saying this is amazing. So yeah, absolutely. I could keep talking to you because this is so interesting and so different from anyone else. I don't see anyone else doing this for corporates out there. Yeah.
No, they're not. No.
So you're very unique, which is amazing. Often it's hard to stand out, but you sure stands out, and you got a great story to tell as well. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Christine. Have a wonderful day, everyone. A terrific Tuesday.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to finish this now.